2026. You keep that little calm face on like it is armor, like nobody can hear the screws shaking underneath it, and I almost respect the effort. Almost. You walk around like you are handling it, like you are fine, like you are above begging for attention, but your eyes keep doing that thing where they look away too fast, like they are afraid somebody will catch you in the act of being human. And you hate that, don't you? You hate being seen when you are weak, but you hate being unseen even more. You have spent years building a version of yourself that can survive other people's moods. You learned when to smile so they stop asking questions, when to nod so they stop pressing, when to shrink so you stop taking up space, when to laugh so they stop aiming their little jokes at your throat. You got good at it. You got so good at it that now you can't tell where the performance ends and you begin. And that's the funniest tragedy. You did all this work to protect your heart, and now you don't know how to live inside it. You call it being mature. You call it being patient. You call it keeping the peace. But it is mostly fear wearing a polite shirt. Fear of conflict. Fear of rejection. Fear of being the one person in the room who is honest and then punished for it. You learned early that honesty costs, so you started paying with silence instead. And silence is cheap at first, like a small coin you drop to avoid a problem. But it compounds, it stacks, it fills your pockets until you can barely stand up straight. That's why you feel heavy when nothing is happening. That's why you feel tired even on days you did nothing. Because you did something. You carried it. You carried every word you swallowed, every time you were disrespected and pretended you didn't notice, every time you were treated like an option and told yourself you were being understanding. Every time you watched someone choose someone else and you smiled like a saint while your chest folded in half. You think I don't know your schedule? The late nights where you stare at a ceiling and replay conversations like you can edit them into dignity? The mornings where you wake up already behind, already guilty, already bargaining with the day like it is a judge? The way you reach for a screen because silence makes you hear yourself. The way you keep your hands busy so your mind doesn't drag you back to that one moment you never talk about. The moment you realized you weren't safe with someone you trusted. Not physically, no, don't get dramatic. Emotionally. The moment you learned they could smile at you while cutting you down. And you still went back. You still went back. Because being hurt by somebody familiar felt less terrifying than being alone with your own thoughts. You don't want to admit that because it makes you feel small. But I am not here to flatter you. I am here to peel you open like a sealed envelope and read what you keep hiding under "I'm okay." You have a private museum of humiliation, don't you? Little exhibits, a teacher's tone, a friend's laugh, a parent's distraction, a lover's delay, a door that didn't open, a message that didn't come, a room where your name wasn't said, a table where you weren't offered a seat. It's not the big tragedies that broke you, not mostly. It's the steady drip of being treated like you were easy to ignore. So you started pre-ignoring yourself just to get ahead of it. You lowered your needs. You lowered your standards. You lowered your voice. You told yourself you were humble, but really you were training people how to treat you by treating yourself like you didn't matter. And here you are now, wondering why the world keeps confirming the story you secretly believe, that you are only worth something when you are useful, agreeable, productive, quiet. You didn't become this way because you are weak. You became this way because you adapted. That's what hurts the most. You did what you had to do to survive the room you were raised in, the friendships you had to navigate, the jobs you had to endure, the love you tried to earn. You learned to predict moods, to scan faces, to measure your words, to feel guilty before anyone even accused you. That hyper-awareness, that constant internal surveillance, it kept you alive, socially, emotionally. But now it is killing you slowly, because you are still living like danger is always about to step through the door. You flinch at kindness because you assume it has a receipt attached. You flinch at praise because you assume it will be used later to trap you. You flinch at silence because you assume it means abandonment. You are not lazy. You are exhausted from being your own guard, your own prison, your own judge. And the cruel part? You do it with such a straight face that people think you are fine. They think you are strong. They think you don't need much. You taught them that. You trained them. And now you resent them for graduating. Look at you, angry at the world for reading the script you handed it. But don't worry. I'm not here to shame you for surviving. I'm here to show you the cost. Every time you swallowed your pain instead of naming it, you told your nervous system that your reality is not worth defending. Every time you apologized for existing, you reinforced the lie that your presence is a burden. Every time you waited for someone to notice you were drowning, you turned your life into a silent test that nobody agreed to take. And then you called them cruel when they failed. They might be cruel, sure. People can be careless. People can be selfish. But you have been quietly sabotaging your own rescue by refusing to raise your hand. Because raising your hand means admitting you need help. And you have a whole history that taught you needing help is shameful. So you stay composed. You stay fine. You stay starving, because at least starvation feels familiar. And then you wonder why your heart is so angry, why your patience is thin, why your joy feels suspicious, why even good news doesn't land. Because you are not living. You are negotiating. You are always negotiating with fear, with shame, with the past, and you call that life. Here is the ugly truth you keep circling but never touching. You don't just fear being rejected by people, you fear being seen clearly and still not chosen. That's the wound. That is the one that makes you overthink every message, reread every tone, replay every glance. You can survive rejection when you know you are honest. What you can't survive, what you think you can't survive, is being fully real and still treated like you are disposable. So you stay half real, you stay strategic, you stay masked, and then you hate yourself for it, because a part of you knows you're betraying your own soul just to avoid a pain you already carry anyway. You're trying to dodge a blade that's already in you. That's what makes you tired. That's what makes you bitter in quiet places. That's what makes you look at happy people and feel that sharp little stab. Not jealousy exactly, more like grief. Grief for the version of you who could have been simple, open, light. If life had been gentler, if someone had protected you properly, if someone had spoken up for you when you were too small to do it yourself. You don't hate yourself because you're broken. You hate yourself because you remember what you were supposed to be before the world convinced you to shrink. You want to talk about the beginning? Fine. It never starts with a dramatic explosion. It starts with a pattern. A child learns the rules of a house without anyone writing them down. Don't ask when they're tired. Don't cry when they're angry. Don't celebrate too loudly because it invites envy. Don't complain because someone has it worse. Don't speak up because it makes you difficult. Don't need too much because you'll be punished with distance. And you were smart. You learned. You watched faces like they were weather maps. You predicted storms. You adjusted your sails. You became the peacekeeper, the comedian, the achiever, the helper, the quiet one, the mature one. Whatever role reduced the chance of being targeted. And if it wasn't family, it was the world outside. Classrooms where embarrassment was entertainment. Friend groups where belonging had a price. Neighborhoods where softness got you laughed at. Workplaces where dignity was traded for approval. Somewhere along the line, you realize that pain isn't just something that happens to you. It's something people can hand you casually, like a receipt, like spare change. That's when you started collecting defenses, not the brave kind, the clever kind. You became agreeable so nobody could accuse you. You became competent so nobody could dismiss you. You became invisible so nobody could attack you. And each defense worked. That's why you kept it. But the problem with defenses is they don't know when to clock out. They keep doing their job even when the war is over. So now you're in a safer season of your life. Maybe not fully safe, but safer. And you're still living like you're one wrong word away from being abandoned. That's why love feels like a trap to you. That's why intimacy feels like interrogation. That's why compliments make you suspicious. You think closeness is the moment someone gets enough information to hurt you efficiently. So you keep a distance you can explain as boundaries. But it's not boundaries. It's fear with a dictionary. Real boundaries are calm. Your distance is tense. Real boundaries don't punish good people. They protect you from bad patterns. Your distance punishes everyone equally because it's easier than sorting. You don't trust your own judgment because you remember the times you misread someone, the times you gave your loyalty to a person who used it like a towel, the times you kept forgiving because you thought love meant enduring anything. You learned endurance, sure, but you also learned to ignore your own alarm system. You taught yourself that discomfort is normal. You taught yourself that disrespect is manageable. You taught yourself that loneliness inside a relationship is better than loneliness alone. That's the kind of lesson that leaves a scar you keep touching without noticing. And then there are the moments you don't call trauma because you think trauma has to be loud. The quiet betrayals. Someone sharing your private pain like gossip. Someone promising they'd show up and then letting you sit there staring at a door like a fool. Someone looking at you when you were vulnerable and choosing to be cold anyway. Someone making you feel like your feelings were an inconvenience. Someone turning your mistakes into your identity. And you took it because you were trained to take it. You were trained to interpret cruelty as your fault. You were trained to think, if I were better, they would treat me better. So you turned life into a self-improvement punishment. You started polishing yourself like a coin, hoping someone would finally see value. You started chasing perfection because you thought perfection buys safety. But perfection is a liar. It never pays what it promises. It just keeps you busy so you don't notice you're still bleeding. You're not chasing excellence. You're chasing permission. Permission to relax. Permission to be loved. Permission to exist without apologizing. And here's the part you avoid. You weren't just hurt by villains. You were hurt by ordinary people doing ordinary, selfish things. People who didn't wake up planning to destroy you. They just didn't care enough to be careful. That's what makes you furious, because you can forgive a monster. You can't forgive somebody who hurts you and then sleeps peacefully. You can't forgive the casualness. You can't forgive the way they moved on while you stayed behind, picking up pieces like you were cleaning a crime scene no one would ever investigate. You've had to be your own investigator, your own witness, your own therapist, your own defender, and you still feel guilty for being tired. You still feel guilty for needing rest. You still feel guilty for wanting someone to choose you without conditions. So you keep making deals with your pain. Just get through this week. Just get through this month. Just get through this year. And every time you say that, you postpone your life like it's an appointment you keep rescheduling. Let me tell you something you don't like hearing. The world does not schedule a day where it suddenly becomes easy, where everyone suddenly becomes kind, where you suddenly become confident because the calendar turned. You want a clean chapter. Life gives you ink and expects you to write while the page is shaking. The question is not whether you've been hurt. That is obvious. The question is whether you will keep using your hurt as a reason to remain half alive. You say, I'm healing, but you keep running the same behaviors that created your misery, over-giving to people who don't reciprocate, staying silent to avoid tension, compromising your values to avoid disapproval, consuming distractions to avoid feeling. Healing isn't a mood. Healing is a decision followed by disciplined action. And that's where you hesitate, because disciplined action means you can't pretend you're powerless. It means you can't hide behind, this is just how I am. It means you have to admit that some of your suffering is no longer coming from what they did to you. It's coming from what you keep doing to yourself to avoid what they did to you. That's the twisted loop. You were harmed, yes, but now you're also maintaining the harm because it feels familiar, and familiarity feels safe even when it hurts. You've built a little house out of coping mechanisms and you call it home. It leaks, it creaks, it smells like old disappointment, but you know where everything is in there. You can navigate it in the dark. Stepping out means learning new rooms, new rules, new risks. And you hate risk, because risk is where you got wounded. So you cling to the known suffering. You cling to the predictable ache. And then you wonder why you feel stuck. You're not stuck because the world chained you. You're stuck because you're holding the chain like it's a handle. You keep it because it proves something. It proves you were hurt. It proves you weren't imagining it. It proves your pain is real. But your pain doesn't need proof anymore. You do. And you keep trying to prove it by staying broken, because you fear that if you become strong, people will say, it wasn't that bad. You fear they'll erase your story the moment you stop bleeding in public. So you keep a private wound open to defend your past. That is a terrible bargain, because your past deserves to be honored, not worshipped. Your suffering deserves acknowledgement, not a throne. And you deserve more than being a monument to what happened. You deserve to become something else without apologizing for it. Now listen to me carefully, because this is where most people start trying to turn away. The autopsy gets messy when we stop blaming only the knife and start examining why you kept walking into the same alley. You tell yourself you were too kind. You tell yourself you saw the good in people. And maybe you did. But you also ignored patterns because facing them would have forced you to act. You overlooked disrespect because confronting it would have risked abandonment. You stayed in places you were not valued because leaving would have confirmed the fear that you were not easy to love. So you negotiated your dignity like it was a cheap product. You gave discounts on your boundaries. You offered free access to your time, your energy, your empathy. And then you felt betrayed when people took it. But that is what people do when you put your soul on the counter and label it available. They take what is offered. They assume you meant it. They assume you are fine. And the ones who are decent will still sometimes take too much, not because they are evil, but because you never told them there was a limit. You expected them to read your suffering through your smile. You expected them to decode your silence. You expected them to notice what you refused to say. That expectation is not noble. It's a trap. It sets you up to feel unloved while giving you a reason not to be honest. Because honesty would be vulnerable. Honesty would be risky. Honesty would break your image of being the person who doesn't need much. And you have invested so much in that image. You built it brick by brick. I'm okay. Don't worry. It's fine. No, really. And every brick made it harder for anyone to reach you. So you started complaining silently. Nobody cares. But how could they when you made caring look unnecessary? How could they when you trained them that your pain is invisible? You got very good at disappearing in plain sight. There's a memory you keep locked behind your ribs, a moment where you wanted to speak, where your throat burned with truth, where your hands shook because you were about to claim yourself, and you didn't. You smiled instead. You made a joke. You changed the subject. You went quiet. That moment didn't just pass. It wrote a rule into you. My truth is dangerous. And every time you repeated that choice, the rule got stronger. So now when you try to be honest, your body reacts like you're stepping onto a ledge. Your heart races. Your mind searches for the quickest escape. You call that anxiety, and sure, it is. But it's also conditioning. It's your system remembering consequences. And the way out of conditioning is not wishing. It's practice. It's exposure. It's controlled, deliberate honesty in small doses until your body learns that truth doesn't always lead to catastrophe. That's the rebuild. But you want to skip to the part where you feel better without doing the part where you act different. Everybody does. They want a healed identity with the same habits that created the wounds. Doesn't work. It never worked. You know it never worked. You've been living proof. Here's another memory you don't like. The times you participated in your own shrinking. Not because you wanted to, but because you were tired. The time you let someone interrupt you and you laughed like it didn't sting. The time you agreed to something you didn't want because you didn't want to be difficult. The time you stayed silent while someone else took credit because you didn't want to look needy. The time you watched a friend disrespect you and you told yourself they were just stressed. The time you stayed in a conversation where you were being drained because you didn't want to seem cold. Those moments look small, but they are how a person disappears. Not in one dramatic leap, in 1,000 tiny steps backwards. And then one day, you look in the mirror and you can't recognize the person staring back because their eyes look like they've been waiting for permission to be alive. That is you. That has been you. And you're angry about it. But your anger is directionless. It hits the wrong targets. It hits yourself. You replay the past and you insult the version of you who was trying to survive. You call yourself weak for not fighting back. You call yourself stupid for trusting. You call yourself pathetic for staying. But that version of you was operating with the tools they had. Compassion doesn't mean excusing. It means understanding the conditions. Understanding is not a soft thing. It's a strategic thing. You can't rebuild what you refuse to understand. So let's understand. You stayed because you feared loneliness. You stayed because you feared being the villain in someone else's story. You stayed because you feared your own anger. You stayed because you feared that leaving would mean you wasted time, and you hate the idea that your suffering was for nothing. You wanted it to mean something. You wanted it to produce love, loyalty, stability. And when it didn't, you felt like a fool. So you kept staying, hoping the story would change so your investment would look wise. That's not love. That's sunk cost. That's gambling with your heart. And don't get offended. I know you hate that word because it makes you sound reckless and you want to be seen as careful. But you were reckless with yourself. You were reckless with your boundaries. You were reckless with your energy. You spent yourself like you had infinite supply because you thought being exhausted was proof you cared. That's another lie you learned, that love is measured by how much you can tolerate. Real love has limits. Real love includes self-respect. Real love doesn't require you to erase yourself to keep someone else comfortable. You know that intellectually, but your body still doesn't believe it. Your body believes love is earned through sacrifice because that's what you practiced. So now, even when someone offers you something healthy, you feel bored or suspicious because it doesn't match the emotional pattern you associate with attachment. Calm feels empty when your nervous system is addicted to chaos. And that addiction doesn't make you evil, it makes you conditioned. The Joker part of me loves that irony. The human mind will cling to pain if pain is what it understands. You think you want peace, but you panic when peace arrives because peace feels like the moment before something bad happens. So you create problems. You overthink. You test people. You withdraw. You become cold before they can. You pick fights in your head. You interpret neutral things as threats. And then you say, see, it never lasts. You are both the victim and the saboteur. That's not an insult. That's a diagnosis. And diagnoses are useful because they point to treatment. Treatment is not romantic. Treatment is repetition. Treatment is accountability. Treatment is you facing the discomfort of change without running back to familiar misery. You want strength? Strength is not loud. It's not rage. It's not winning arguments in your imagination at 2 a.m. Strength is sitting with your feelings without letting them drive. Strength is telling the truth even when your voice shakes. Strength is letting people be disappointed with you without collapsing into guilt. Strength is choosing yourself without needing applause. Strength is refusing to weaponize your pain against yourself. And I need you to hear that last part again. Refusing to weaponize your pain against yourself. Because you have been doing it. Not with dramatic gestures, not with theatrics, but with slow, daily self-punishment. Harsh self-talk, neglecting your needs, isolating when you need connection, procrastinating and then insulting yourself for procrastinating, comparing yourself to people you don't even respect, revisiting memories like they are court evidence and you're trying to convict yourself. You keep sentencing yourself for crimes you committed while bleeding. Enough. The world will already test you. You don't need to become your own executioner. You need to become your own disciplined ally. And that means something specific. You stop treating your mind like a dumping ground. You stop feeding it the same poison stories. You start talking to yourself like you're responsible for what happens next. Not like a victim begging for rescue. Not like a tyrant demanding perfection. Like a commander who knows the mission is survival with honor. You don't need to be flawless. You need to be consistent. You don't need to be fearless. You need to be honest about your fear and act anyway. You don't need to be loved by everyone. You need to be respectable to yourself. Because here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. Self-respect is the foundation that makes everything else stable. Without it, you can have attention and still feel empty. You can have friends and still feel lonely. You can have achievements and still feel like a fraud. Self-respect is the quiet spine that holds you up when nobody is clapping. And you build it the same way you build trust with anyone, by keeping promises. Small ones, daily ones, painfully simple ones. The kind you keep dismissing because you think the solution has to be dramatic to match the pain. It doesn't. The pain was repetitive. The healing will be repetitive too. The difference is the direction. So let's make this year mean something without turning it into a fantasy. 2026 isn't a miracle. It's a mirror. It's a hard, bright mirror that shows you the cost of your old patterns and dares you to choose differently without begging life for permission. You keep waiting for a feeling, motivation, inspiration, confidence, like it's a train you can ride to a better version of yourself. But feelings are unreliable drivers. They get tired. They get distracted. They get scared and take the wrong exit. Discipline is different. Discipline is you doing what you said you'd do even when your feelings throw a tantrum. Discipline is not punishment, it's protection. It protects future you from the chaos created by present you when present you is overwhelmed. And you are overwhelmed a lot because your inner world has been carrying old grief with new responsibilities. You are trying to build a life while dragging a suitcase full of unprocessed pain. Of course you get tired. Of course you shut down. Of course you dissociate into distractions. Your system is trying to conserve energy because it thinks survival is still the priority. And survival is the priority, but not the tiny survival you've been doing. The one where you merely exist and call it living. I'm talking about survival with standards, survival with self-respect, survival with clarity. You don't have to be cruel to yourself to be strong. You don't have to be harsh to be disciplined. You have to be exact. You have to be truthful. You have to stop making vague promises like, I'll change, and start making measurable commitments like, I will do the next right thing even when I don't feel like it. You want to rebuild? Then stop building your identity on your mood and start building it on your actions. Your mood will follow later, dragged behind you like a stubborn shadow. You want to stop feeling powerless? Then stop practicing powerlessness. That means when you notice yourself spiraling into the same old script, they don't care, I'm not enough, it's too late, I always mess it up. You don't argue with the script like it's a philosophy debate. You label it. You recognize it. You say, that's the old story talking. And then you do something grounded. Breathe, stand up, drink water, clean a corner of your space, write one honest paragraph, send one clear message, complete one task, take one walk, make one prayerful moment of gratitude without theatrics. Not because it fixes everything, but because it proves to your nervous system that you are not trapped in your head. You are a person who can move. Movement is medicine, not the motivational kind, the biological kind, the kind that tells your body, we are not frozen. You have spent too much time frozen. Frozen by fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of success, fear of being seen, fear of being laughed at. You keep imagining humiliation as if it's a death sentence. It's not. It's painful, yes. It burns. It makes you want to hide, but it passes. And every time you survive it without retreating into self-hatred, you become sturdier. Sturdiness is the goal, not happiness. Happiness is a visitor. Sturdiness is your house. And you build it with habits that don't depend on applause. You also build it by choosing your relationships like your life depends on it, because it does. You have tolerated too many half-friends, too many inconsistent people, too many charming talkers who disappear when responsibility shows up. Stop calling inconsistency mysterious. Stop calling disrespect honesty. Stop calling neglect busy. Call things what they are. Language matters. When you name reality accurately, you stop giving your pain unnecessary confusion. Confusion is exhausting. Clarity is painful at first, but it's lighter. And then you do the hard part. You act on the clarity. You set boundaries, not as threats, not as emotional ultimatums, but as quiet policies. If you speak to me this way, I will end the conversation. If you cancel repeatedly, I will stop scheduling time. If you only contact me when you need something, I will stop answering quickly. Not because you hate them, because you respect yourself. Respect is not loud. Respect is consistent. And yes, some people will leave when you stop being convenient. That will hurt. It will reopen old wounds. Your chest will scream, "See, you're unlovable." But that scream is the past trying to keep you in familiar cages. People who leave when you gain self-respect are not proof you are unlovable. They are proof you were being used. That's not a tragedy. That's a revelation. And revelations sting because they remove illusions. You've been living on illusions like they were food. Illusions that if you just give more, they'll finally value you. Illusions that if you stay quiet, you'll be safe. Illusions that if you wait, time will fix what courage is required to fix. Time doesn't fix what you keep feeding. Time reveals what you keep choosing. That's why you're scared of time. Because it's been revealing your patterns, and you can't hide from the evidence anymore. Let's talk about the grief you carry for the years you feel you wasted. You stare at your past like it's a crime scene, and you keep counting the losses, the opportunities you didn't take, the words you didn't say, the people you trusted, the talents you neglected, the health you postponed, the love you begged for. You think that counting is accountability. It's not. It's torture. Accountability asks, what did I learn and what will I do differently? Torture asks, how can I make myself suffer for being human? You want to honor your past? Then use it. Use it as a teacher, not as a jailer. The fact that you regret is proof you have standards now. The fact that you feel pain is proof your heart isn't dead. Don't turn those proofs into weapons against yourself. Turn them into fuel for precision. Precision looks like this. You stop making excuses that sound noble. You stop saying, "I'm just tired," when you mean, "I'm avoiding." You stop saying, "I'm just busy," when you mean, "I'm scared." You stop saying, "I don't care," when you mean, "I care too much and I don't know how to handle it." You stop saying, "It doesn't matter," when you mean, "It mattered and it hurt." You become honest with yourself first, because self-deception is the root of your stagnation. You can't steer a vehicle if you keep lying about where you are. Admit where you are. Admit what you want. Admit what you fear. Admit what you did. Admit what was done to you. And then, slowly, you start living like a person who believes their life is worth governing. You build a routine that doesn't depend on your mood. You wake up and you do one thing that builds dignity before you do anything that builds distraction. You keep your word in small ways. You clean what you can clean. You fix what you can fix. You ask for help when you need it without turning it into humiliation. You treat your body like an ally, not an afterthought. You feed it. You rest it. You move it. You don't punish it because someone else hurt you. You do not romanticize despair. You do not worship darkness. You learn from it and you move through it. The Joker in me loves darkness because it exposes people. But even I know darkness is only useful if it makes you see. If you live in it, you go blind. So you use it like a tunnel. You pass through, you learn the texture, you memorize the turns, and you keep walking until you reach air. And when you reach air, You don't pretend the tunnel never happened. You just stop living there. That's the difference between healing and denial. Healing remembers without chaining. Denial forgets until the same wound repeats in a different costume.
And now we come to the part where silence becomes strength, not emptiness. You've been afraid of silence because silence is where the truth speaks. In silence, you remember the nights you felt unwanted. In silence, you remember the day you realized someone you loved didn't respect you. In silence, you hear the words you never said. In silence, you feel the anger you keep hiding under "it's okay." In silence, you feel the grief you keep postponing with noise. But silence is also where you rebuild your spine. Because in silence, you can finally hear what you actually value, not what you were trained to perform. You value dignity. You value loyalty. You value sincerity. You value stability. You value being able to look at yourself and not flinch. So start living in a way that matches those values, even when nobody notices, especially when nobody notices. You have spent too long performing for an audience that doesn't clap. Stop. You're not here to win approval from people who only love you when you're convenient. You're here to become the kind of person who can endure the world without losing themselves. That's not a slogan, that's a craft. It takes repetition. It takes humility. It takes the willingness to be misunderstood while you're changing. People will prefer the old you because the old you was predictable. The old you didn't challenge them. The old you didn't say no. The old you didn't ask for clarity. The old you didn't require effort. When you change, some will accuse you of becoming cold. You're not becoming cold. You're becoming clear. Coldness is numbness. Clarity is warmth with boundaries. And yes, you'll make mistakes. You'll overcorrect. You'll be too firm one day, too soft the next. That's fine. This is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming awake. Awake people still stumble. They just stop lying about why they fell. You also need to understand something that will hurt your pride. You can't rebuild alone forever. Independence is admirable, but isolation is a wound pretending to be a virtue. There is a difference between solitude and hiding. Solitude is chosen. Hiding is fear. You've been hiding. You've been telling yourself you're private when you're actually terrified of being known. But being known is how love becomes real. Not the fantasy love you crave, the real kind that requires honesty, patience, communication, forgiveness, effort. You don't have to spill your life to everyone. You just have to stop treating vulnerability like a crime. Start with one safe person, one honest sentence, one moment where you don't decorate your pain with jokes. Let your voice be plain. Let your eyes be steady. Let the room hold your truth without you rushing to take it back. That's courage. And if you don't have a safe person yet, then you build safety in structured ways. A trusted counselor, a mentor, a community space built on respect. You don't gamble your heart on random attention and then act surprised when it breaks. Be selective, be patient, be disciplined. Your healing deserves quality control. And you need to stop confusing punishment with progress. You think you have to suffer to deserve growth. You think you have to grind yourself down to earn peace. That's a false economy. Peace is not purchased with self-hatred. Peace is built with order. Order in your sleep. Order in your schedule, order in your boundaries, order in your mind. Not rigid order that turns you into a machine, living order that makes you stable. You also need to forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know. You were taught a set of rules that helped you survive. Now you are learning a new set of rules that will help you live. That learning curve is awkward. It will humiliate you sometimes. You will say the wrong thing. You will set a boundary and then feel guilty. You will choose yourself and then feel selfish. You will rest and then feel lazy. Those feelings are withdrawal symptoms from a lifetime of earning your worth. Let them pass. Don't worship them. Don't obey them. Observe them like weather. Your feelings are real, but they are not always accurate. And accuracy is what you need now. Accuracy about your patterns. Accuracy about your limits. Accuracy about other people. Accuracy about time. 2026 is not here to save you. It's here to expose you. It will show you what you keep postponing. It will show you what you keep tolerating. It will show you what you keep feeding. So choose what you feed. Feed your courage with small acts. Feed your mind with truth, not constant comparison. Feed your body with respect. Feed your future with consistency. And when the old pain rises, because it will, don't dramatize it into destiny. Don't say, "I'm back to zero." You're not. You're back to a lesson, and lessons repeat until they're learned. This time, learn it. When someone disrespects you, don't turn it into a story about your worth. Turn it into information about their character and your boundary. When you fail, don't turn it into an identity. Turn it into data. When you feel lonely, don't turn it into proof you're unlovable. Turn it into a signal. You need connection. You need purpose. You need movement. You need service. You need to build. You are not a fragile ornament meant to be kept safe from life. You are a living thing designed to adapt, to grow, to withstand. And yes, you have been hurt. You have been ignored. You have been humiliated. You have been abandoned in ways that still make your throat tighten when you remember. None of that is your fault. But what you do next is your responsibility. Responsibility isn't blame, it's ownership. Ownership is power. Power is calm. And calm is what you've been chasing in all the wrong places. You want calm? Then stop lying to yourself. Stop betraying yourself. Stop outsourcing your worth. Stop feeding your fear. Stop waiting for someone to come back and make the past right. The past will not become right. You will become stronger. That's the only kind of justice life offers. And it's not poetic. It's practical. It's boring. It's daily. It's you waking up and choosing integrity in small, unglamorous ways. It's you sitting in silence and not flinching. It's you feeling pain and not running. It's you being tired and still keeping one promise. It's you letting the night be dark without letting your mind invent monsters. It's you learning to stand in your own presence without needing noise to distract you from yourself. Not a song, not a lullaby, just a thin thread of breath, a reminder that you are here, still breathing, still capable. And that's the part you keep forgetting.
You are capable. Not of becoming some perfect hero, not of erasing your scars, but of living with them without letting them steer. You can carry your history without becoming it. You can remember without drowning. You can be honest without collapsing. You can be disciplined without becoming hard-hearted. You can be strong without becoming cruel. You can endure without romanticizing pain. You can rebuild without denying what broke you. So when the room goes quiet after this, and you feel that familiar urge to retreat into the old story, don't. Sit there. Let the silence press against you. Let it try to scare you. And then look it in the face and do nothing dramatic. Just breathe. Just straighten your back. Just decide quietly that you will not abandon yourself again. Because the real betrayal wasn't what they did. The real betrayal was how often you agreed with them by treating yourself like you were less. End that agreement. Not with rage, with policy, with action, with consistency, with truth. Let silence become the place where you finally stop performing and start governing your life like it's worth something. Because you've spent so long treating your own life like it's on probation. Like one mistake means you're back in the cell, back in the corner, back in that old role where you don't get to speak unless it's to apologize. And I can see it in the way your thoughts march. Always filing, always categorizing, always asking, what will they think? Like they are some invisible court that never adjourns. You want to know the joke? The court you fear isn't out there. It's in you. It's a committee of old voices you collected over the years. The voice that said you were too loud. The voice that said you were too quiet. The voice that said you should be grateful. The voice that said you were a burden. The voice that said you'd never make it. The voice that smiled while it dismissed you. And you dragged all of them into your head like you were trying to be fair. Like you were trying to understand. And now they hold meetings every time you try to do something brave. Every time you step toward growth, the committee convenes, and you call that thinking it through. It's not thinking, it's intimidation. It's old fear wearing the mask of logic. Logic doesn't tremble. Your logic trembles. Your logic sweats. Your logic looks for exits. And I've watched you do it. You start to move towards something, a new habit, a hard conversation, a healthier boundary, a serious dream. And then you begin building an elegant argument for why it's not the right time, not the right environment, not the right version of you. You make it sound wise. You make it sound responsible. You make it sound like you're avoiding chaos. But you're avoiding exposure. You're avoiding the moment where you try and the world sees you try. Because trying is dangerous when you've been humiliated before. Trying means you might fail publicly. Trying means you might get laughed at again, dismissed again, ignored again. Trying means you might have to admit you're not as in control as you pretend to be. So you stay in the safe misery where you can still say, I could've, and you treat I could've like it's the same thing as I did. It isn't. I could've is a fantasy that keeps your ego comfortable while your life stays small. You've been feeding your ego crumbs of potential and calling it nourishment. Potential doesn't build a spine. Action does. And action has a price. Discomfort, awkwardness, uncertainty, the risk of being misunderstood, the risk of not being immediately rewarded. You hate delayed reward, don't you? Because you've lived through too many delayed rescues. You've lived through too many later promises that never came. So now your system doesn't trust the future. It wants relief now. It wants certainty now. It wants proof now. That's why you get pulled into whatever numbs you fastest, not because you're weak, but because your body is trying to stop the bleeding with whatever cloth is closest, even if the cloth is dirty. You don't need shame for that. You need strategy. You need to stop treating your cravings for distraction, for validation, for comfort as moral failures, and start treating them as signals. The signal that you're depleted, the signal that you're lonely, the signal that you're carrying too much alone, the signal that you're trying to live a grown life with a nervous system still braced for old battles. And you can't just decide your nervous system will relax. You have to train it. You train it the way you train anything, by repetition. You don't wait until you feel calm to do calm actions. You do calm actions until calm becomes more normal. You stop making your inner world a hostage to your environment. You stop letting every text, every glance, every delayed reply decide your self-worth for the day. Your self-worth shouldn't swing like a cheap sign in the wind, but right now it does, and you call it being sensitive. No, it's being unanchored. You have no anchor because you've been trying to anchor yourself in other people's approval, and approval is the most unstable foundation on earth. It erodes the moment you stop pleasing. That's why you panic when you consider changing, because changing means disappointing someone. You'll still care, but you won't be controlled by caring. You'll still want connection, but you won't beg for it. You'll still feel sadness, but you won't treat it like prophecy. You'll still remember, but you won't live there. That's the strength I'm pointing you toward. Not a loud strength. A strength that can sit in a room alone without collapsing. A strength that can be kind without being weak. A strength that can forgive without forgetting lessons. A strength that can endure hardship without turning it into identity. A strength that can look at 2026 and not ask it to save you, but ask you to govern yourself with honesty. Because when you govern yourself, life stops feeling like something that happens to you and starts feeling like something you participate in. Participation is dignity. Participation is agency. And agency is the thing you keep pretending you don't have, so you don't have to risk anything. But you do have it. You have it right now in the smallest choices. And the smallest choices are the ones that will build the version of you that doesn't flinch at silence. The version of you that can hear the old committee inside your head and still choose your own voice. calmly, steadily, day after day, until the committee gets bored, and the room gets quiet, and the quiet stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like home.